What if the moment you believe your life has stopped is the very moment your inner world is beginning to move faster than ever before? What if the heaviness in your body, the silence in your heart, the strange loss of motivation, and the desire to disappear from the noise of the world are not signs of failure, but signs of transformation? Nikola Tesla spent his life studying invisible forces, electricity, vibration, resonance, frequency, magnetism, and the hidden laws that move beneath the surface of ordinary reality. He understood that the most powerful things in the universe are often unseen. The current inside a wire, the charge in the atmosphere, the pulse of the earth, the mysterious field that connects energy to matter, and perhaps the human soul works in a similar way. There are seasons when, from the outside, nothing seems to be happening. You are not moving forward. You are not producing. You are not chasing. You are not becoming the person the world told you to become. But inside, something vast is taking place. A silent rewiring. A deep recalibration. A shift in frequency so profound that the old version of you can no longer continue operating in the same way. Lately, maybe you have felt it. You do not want to do anything. You know there are things you should be doing, yet your body refuses to move. The things you once loved no longer awaken anything inside you. The people you used to meet feel heavy. The work you used to tolerate now feels impossible. Even simple routines begin to collapse. And then the mind begins its accusation. Am I just lazy? Am I falling behind? Is something wrong with me? Am I losing my purpose? But what if the truth is far stranger and far more beautiful? What if this stillness is not the end of your energy, but the beginning of your awakening? What if your soul has entered a state of silence because it is receiving a new signal, a new alignment, a new inner instruction, a new frequency from the future version of yourself? This is the mystery we are about to enter, not as a cheap fantasy, not as a claim of absolute proof, but as a deep interpretation of an experience many people quietly go through and rarely understand. Because when a soul prepares to move into the next stage of life, it often does not begin with excitement. It begins with stillness. It begins with emptiness. It begins with the strange sensation that you can no longer force yourself to live as you once did. And if this theory is even partly true, then the question is not, why can't I move? The real question is, what is moving inside you while you appear to be standing still? Lately, you may have found yourself thinking, I don't want to do anything. Not because you have no dreams, not because you have no strength, not because your life has no meaning, but because something deep within you has entered what could be called a stillness mode. There are tasks waiting for you, responsibilities, messages, plans, obligations, things that once seemed manageable, things that perhaps you used to handle without thinking, and yet now the body feels heavy, the mind feels distant, the heart does not respond. You may sit there staring at the day as if it belongs to someone else. You may know exactly what must be done, but the energy needed to begin simply does not arrive. This is where many people begin to blame themselves. They say, I'm weak. They say, I'm lazy. They say, I'm wasting time. But according to this spiritual interpretation, the condition is not laziness. It is internal redirection. The energy that was once flowing outward toward work, people, effort, performance, control, and survival is being pulled inward for a deeper adjustment. Imagine a great electrical machine being shut down, not because it is broken, but because its internal circuitry is being upgraded. If you force the current through old wires during a powerful reconstruction, the system overheats. It fails. It burns through its own resistance. The same may be true of the human spirit. When your frequency begins to change, when your consciousness begins to awaken, when the old structure of your identity can no longer carry the new energy of your life, the soul may reduce external movement. Not as punishment, not as failure, but as protection. It is almost like a phone updating its operating system. During the update, certain functions slow down. Some apps stop responding. The screen may freeze. To an impatient user, it looks like something is wrong. But beneath the surface, new data is being written. Old code is being replaced. The system is preparing to restart with a higher capacity. Your soul may be doing something similar. The part of you that once lived by pressure, fear, obligation, and the constant need to prove yourself is being rewritten. The old patterns, I must be productive, I must keep up, I must satisfy everyone, I must never stop, begin to lose their authority. And because those patterns once powered your daily life, their collapse can feel like losing your drive. But in reality, you may not be losing your drive. You may be losing the false fuel. You may be releasing the energy that forced you forward while ignoring your real self. That is why this period can feel so confusing. The outside world says movement means progress, but the inner world follows different laws. In nature, the seed does not look productive while it is buried under soil. The caterpillar does not look successful inside the chrysalis. The night sky does not appear active, yet entire fields of cosmic energy move through it in silence. Stillness is not always stagnation. Sometimes stillness is transformation in its most hidden form, and this is where the mystery deepens. Because when this stillness mode appears, it often arrives before a major shift in identity. You may not know what is coming. You may not know what your next life will look like, but the old current has already begun to shut down. You are not being asked to push harder. You are being asked to listen, to breathe, to stop attacking yourself for needing rest. Because the more you panic, the more painful the process becomes. Your mind is still trying to drag you back into the old rhythm, while your soul is pulling you into a deeper silence. This creates tension. The mind says, do something. The soul says, be still, I am working. And if you can trust that silence even a little, something begins to settle. The nervous system softens. The inner field becomes clearer. The scattered energy returns to its center. Then, after this mysterious pause, many people experience a surprising change. A new desire begins to rise, not forced, not manufactured, not borrowed from society, but natural. A quiet, powerful yes from deep within. It is not the old motivation, born from fear. It is a living current, a true passion, a signal from the next version of yourself. So if you are in the season of not wanting to do anything, do not rush to condemn it. You may be standing inside one of the most important thresholds of your life. You may look still, but beneath the surface, the voltage of your soul is changing. Another sign often appears quietly, almost without warning. You no longer want to meet anyone. Conversation feels heavy. Replying to messages feels exhausting. Social plans feel like noise. The thought of going outside and performing normal friendliness feels almost impossible. You may look at your phone and feel a strange resistance. Not hatred, not arrogance, not rejection of others, just the deep need to be alone. And again, the mind begins to question. Am I becoming antisocial? Am I losing my ability to connect? Am I becoming cold? But according to this view, this is not isolation, it is energetic protection. When a person enters a deeper stage of awakening, their sensitivity often increases. Words that once passed through unnoticed begin to leave an imprint. The emotional atmosphere of a room becomes louder. A small comment, a forced smile, a tense conversation, or even the subtle pressure of someone's expectations can feel like static in the nervous system. It is as if the soul has become a more delicate receiver. Like a scientific instrument tuned to subtle frequencies, it begins to detect currents that were always present but previously ignored. And because of this sensitivity, the soul begins to reduce external noise. Not because people are bad, not because the world is dangerous, but because the inner signal has become too important to lose. Tesla was fascinated by invisible transmission, the idea that energy could move through space without visible contact. In a symbolic way, human beings are also transmitters. Every person carries a field. Emotions, thoughts, fears, desires, memories, expectations. When you are surrounded by many fields at once, your own signal can become distorted. During an awakening process, the soul may need silence the way a laboratory needs controlled conditions. If the experiment is delicate, you cannot allow interference. If the frequency is being tuned, you cannot flood the room with noise. And this is why solitude becomes necessary. You are not running away from life. You are returning to your own center. When you spend time alone, the water of the mind begins to settle. Imagine a pond after a storm. While the water is moving, the surface reflects nothing clearly. But when the movement stops, the sky appears again. The moon appears. The depths become visible. Your soul needs that still water. Because too much contact with other people's energy can drown out your inner voice. You may begin to confuse their fears with your fears, their desires with your desires, their judgments with truth. And so your deeper self quietly creates distance. One unanswered message. One cancelled plan. One evening spent alone. One silent room where no one needs anything from you. And slowly, something sacred returns. Your own voice. Your own rhythm. Your own pulse. This is why the desire to be alone should not always be treated as a problem. Sometimes it is the soul creating a protected chamber for renewal. It is the inner world turning down the volume of everything that is not essential. And when this phase passes, something remarkable often happens. Relationships begin to reorganize. The people who no longer resonate with your energy may naturally drift away, not through conflict, not through drama, but through a quiet fading. Conversations become less necessary. Old bonds lose their charge. Forced connections begin to feel impossible. At the same time, the people who truly match your new frequency remain. Their presence does not exhaust you. Their words do not pull you away from yourself. Being near them feels simple, clean, and honest. This is not rejection. It is refinement. It is the soul sorting resonance from noise. And perhaps this is one of the most mysterious aspects of human transformation. When your inner frequency changes, the outer world begins to rearrange itself around that change. You do not always need to cut people off. Sometimes, as your energy becomes clearer, life itself reveals who belongs in your field. So if you feel the need to be alone, do not immediately judge it as loneliness. There is a kind of solitude that heals. There is a kind of silence that protects. There is a kind of distance that allows the real self to return. And beyond that silence, the next stage begins. Because once the noise fades, you may notice something even stranger. The things you once loved no longer feel alive. One day, without any clear reason, the things that used to excite you stop working. A hobby that once made time disappear now feels empty. Entertainment feels dull. Shopping, scrolling, conversations, old routines, old dreams, things that once carried emotional charge begin to lose their color. You may try to return to them. You may say, maybe I'm just tired. You may force yourself to enjoy what you used to enjoy. But something has changed. The old frequency no longer reaches you. This can be frightening because we often build identity around what we like. We say, this is who I am. This is what I enjoy. This is what makes me feel alive. So when those interests fade, it can feel as if the self is disappearing. But in this interpretation, the fading of old interests is not always a loss. It may be completion. The soul may be closing a chapter, not violently, not with punishment, but with the quiet finality of a book that has been fully read. Every experience teaches something. Every fascination contains a lesson. Every obsession, hobby, attraction, and dream may serve a purpose for a season. But when the lesson is complete, the energy naturally withdraws. That is why losing interest does not necessarily mean you are becoming numb. It may mean you have graduated. You received what that experience was meant to give you. The emotional charge is gone because the soul no longer needs that classroom. And now a space is opening. This space can feel uncomfortable. Human beings fear emptiness. We want to fill every silence, explain every gap, replace every ending with a new plan. But the empty period between old desire and new purpose is one of the most important phases of transformation. It is the space where the future can enter. If every old interest remained alive forever, there would be no room for the new signal. If every outdated attachment continued to demand your attention, the soul's next calling would be drowned out by the past. So the universe or life, or the intelligence of your own deep consciousness, begins to turn the page. At first, this feels like boredom. Then it feels like confusion. Then it becomes a kind of sacred emptiness. You are not who you used to be, but you are not yet fully who you are becoming. This is the in-between field, a place of uncertainty, but also a place of creation. In electrical terms, it is like a circuit being disconnected from one source before being connected to another. There is a moment when the lights flicker, a moment when the room is dark, a moment when nothing seems to power the system. But the darkness is not permanent. It is transitional, and during this time, forcing the old pleasures to return can create suffering. You may watch the same shows, meet the same people, follow the same routines, buy the same things, chase the same distractions, and feel only a strange dullness. This is not because life has lost meaning. It is because the meaning is moving. The signal has shifted. Your mission channel, so to speak, is changing frequency. And when that happens, the old station becomes static. What once sounded like music becomes noise. What once felt exciting becomes tiring. What once gave identity now feels too small. Then, slowly, without force, new interests begin to appear. A subject you never cared about begins to call you. A book, a place, a craft, a spiritual practice, a scientific idea, a creative path, a form of service, a new way of living. Something begins to glow at the edge of awareness. Not loudly, not with pressure, but with a quiet magnetic pull. You may not understand it yet, but the soul does. It recognizes the next frequency before the mind has language for it. So if nothing excites you right now, do not assume that your life has become empty. You may simply be between transmissions. The old signal has ended. The new one has not fully arrived. And in that sacred silence, the next version of your life is preparing to speak. For many people, the awakening process becomes most painful when it reaches the area of work. Because work is not just a schedule, it is survival, it is identity, it is money, it is social expectation. It is the place where the world often measures your value. So when you begin to feel, I cannot go to work anymore, fear rises immediately. The morning arrives and your chest becomes heavy. You think about the office, the tasks, the people, the commute, the messages, the deadlines, and something in your body resists. Your feet become slow, your mind becomes foggy, your heart feels as if it is contracting, and once again, the old inner judge appears. Am I being irresponsible? Am I ungrateful? Am I just weak? But if this condition has been growing quietly for a long time, it may not be ordinary tiredness. It may be a sign that your energy is no longer resonating with the path you are on. This does not always mean you must quit immediately. It does not mean you should act recklessly or abandon practical reality, but it does mean something important deserves attention, because the soul often speaks first through discomfort. Before a life changes externally, it becomes unbearable internally. You may still be capable of doing the work, you may still perform the tasks, you may still appear functional, but the deeper self knows this is no longer aligned. In the language of frequency, resonance occurs when two systems vibrate in harmony. When they do not, tension builds. A place, a job, or a role that once matched your survival needs may eventually stop matching your inner evolution. The work itself may not be bad, the people may not be bad, but the field may no longer be yours. And when that mismatch continues, the body becomes the messenger. Fatigue, resistance, lack of concentration, loss of motivation, a strange sadness before the workday begins. These are not always signs of failure. Sometimes they are navigation signals. They say, look deeper. They say, something has shifted. They say, there is another direction waiting. Some spiritual interpretations describe reality as a field of possibilities, a quantum-like landscape in which choices, attention, and energy shape the future we move toward. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the idea points toward something powerful. When your inner world changes, certain external paths begin to close, while others begin to call. The problem is that the mind often wants certainty before it moves. It says, show me the full plan first, show me the destination, show me the guarantee. But the soul rarely reveals the entire map at once. It begins with discomfort, then honesty, then a pause, then one small step. The danger is not feeling the discomfort. The danger is ignoring it for so long that you lose the ability to hear yourself. If you keep forcing yourself to remain in a field that drains you, the inner voice becomes quieter. The nervous system adapts to suffering. You begin to mistake exhaustion for maturity and numbness for responsibility. But when you stop, even briefly, and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? The energy begins to shift. You may discover a desire you buried years ago. You may realize you want a different way of working. You may admit that your life has been shaped too much by fear and not enough by truth. You may feel a quiet sentence rising from within. This is not how I want to live. That sentence can be terrifying, but it can also be the first honest spark of a new future. The feeling of not wanting to work, then, may not be an enemy. It may be the doorway into a deeper question. What kind of life is actually aligned with my soul? Not the life that looks impressive, not the life that satisfies everyone else, not the life built entirely around survival, but the life that allows your energy to breathe. This is not an invitation to abandon reason. The physical world matters, bills matter, responsibilities matter, but your inner truth matters too. And when that truth becomes strong enough, it will not remain silent. So if work feels unbearable, do not simply label yourself lazy. Listen with precision. Observe the signal. Study your own life like a scientist studying an invisible current. Where does your energy collapse? Where does it rise? What feels false? What feels alive? Because the soul may already be pointing toward the next direction, and the moment you stop fighting the signal, the future may begin to reorganize. Another sign appears in the ordinary structure of daily life. The routine begins to fall apart. You used to wake up early, but now mornings feel impossible. You used to keep your space clean, but now the room stays messy. You used to eat in a certain rhythm, sleep at a certain time, manage small tasks, keep order around you. Then suddenly, even simple things become difficult. The laundry waits. The dishes wait. The schedule dissolves. Messages remain unanswered. Your sleep changes. Some nights you cannot sleep at all. Other days you feel as if you could sleep forever. And once again, shame enters. What happened to me? Why can't I live normally? Why am I so undisciplined? But according to this interpretation, The collapse of routine may occur because the soul is prioritizing deep rest over external order. Awakening is not merely a change in belief, it is a change in energy. It is the release of old emotional patterns, old identities, old fears, old attachments, and old survival strategies. And that kind of inner process consumes enormous force. If the body is the visible machine, the soul is the hidden generator. When the generator is being repaired, the lights in some rooms may dim. This is why the outer life can appear disorganized, while the inner life is actually undergoing purification. You may not be cleaning your room because something deeper is being cleaned inside you. You may not be following your old schedule because your old schedule was built around an old version of you. You may not be sleeping normally because the nervous system is processing energy it once stored away. This does not mean every disruption should be romanticized. Physical and mental health matter, support matters, practical care matters. But emotionally, it is important not to turn every difficult season into a weapon against yourself. Sometimes life becomes messy because the inner structure is being rebuilt, and during this period, sensitivity often increases. Sounds feel louder, notifications feel intrusive, crowded spaces feel overwhelming. A simple errand can feel like too much input. Even small responsibilities may carry a weight they did not carry before. This is because the protective layers around the old self have begun to thin. The true self is closer to the surface. The system is more open, more receptive, more easily affected. Like an exposed wire, it must be handled with care. So the soul begins to ask for quieter conditions. Less noise, less pressure, less performance, more stillness, more softness, more room to breathe. And if you resist this, the body may intensify the signal. But if you cooperate even gently, the process becomes less frightening. You do not need to rebuild your entire life in one day. You do not need to restore perfect discipline immediately. Sometimes the most powerful act is simply this. Drink water, open a window, take one slow breath, clear one small surface, eat something simple, lie down without guilt. Let the nervous system understand that it is safe. Because after this stage, many people experience a surprising return of natural order. Not the harsh discipline of the old self, but a softer rhythm, a cleaner rhythm, a life that begins to organize itself from the inside out. Suddenly you want to clean. Suddenly you want to sleep better. Suddenly you choose food that supports you. Suddenly you feel ready to move again. Not because you forced yourself through shame, but because the inner adjustment is complete enough for energy to return. That is the difference between forced discipline and aligned rhythm. Forced discipline says, I must control myself. Aligned rhythm says, my life now supports who I truly am. So if your routine has collapsed, do not see it as proof that you are broken. It may be a message. The old structure no longer fits the new energy. Let the rebuilding be gentle. Let it begin with one small act of care. Because even in the disorder, the soul may be arranging a deeper order you cannot yet see. Then comes one of the strangest emotional states of all. Anxiety grows stronger, and at the very same time, a feeling of maybe none of this matters so much begins to appear. One moment, you worry about the future. You feel pressure in the chest, urgency in the mind, fear without a clear source. You wonder what will happen, whether you are behind, whether your life is falling apart. Then, almost mysteriously, another feeling rises, a kind of surrender, a quiet thought, maybe it will be okay. Or even, why was I carrying all of this so seriously? This contradiction can feel confusing. How can you be anxious and detached at the same time? How can you fear the future and also feel strangely released from it? But this may be the soul shedding an old skin. The anxiety often belongs to the old self. It is the voice of the identity that depended on control. The self that believed safety came from approval, planning, performance, and meeting every expectation. When that structure begins to dissolve, anxiety naturally rises. Because the old self feels it is dying. The old roles are losing power. The old standards are breaking. The old beliefs, what you should be, how you should live, what success should look like, no longer hold the same authority. And when the mind loses its old reference points, it panics. This panic does not mean you are moving backward. It may mean the old system is being dismantled. At the same time, the feeling of maybe it doesn't matter belongs to the new self. Not in a careless way, not in a hopeless way, but in a liberated way. You begin to care less about things that once controlled you. Other people's opinions lose some of their charge. Social expectations feel less sacred. The need to appear successful, impressive, agreeable, and constantly productive begins to weaken. This is not apathy. It is the beginning of freedom. It is the soul deciding what is truly worth carrying into the next stage. Imagine the shedding of a shell. The creature inside is vulnerable, not yet fully formed in its new shape. There is discomfort, there is exposure, there is uncertainty, but there is also release. Anxiety is the cracking of the old shell. Surrender is the breath of the new life inside. Both can exist together because transformation is not clean. It is not a straight line. It is an electrical storm inside the human heart, old currents colliding with new ones, fear meeting trust, control meeting surrender. This is why you may feel unstable. Not because you are failing, but because two versions of you are briefly present at once. The old self says, hold on. The new self says, let go. The old self says, what will people think? The new self says, what does my soul know? The old self says, you must become something. The new self says, you are allowed to simply be. And in that tension, a new value system begins to form. Things that once seemed important begin to fade. Status, approval, constant achievement, being understood by everyone, keeping up appearances, proving your worth. And in their place, simpler desires appear. Peace, truth, rest, a clean heart, honest relationships, a life that does not require you to betray yourself every morning. This is not a small change. It is a complete reorganization of the inner world. So if you feel anxious and strangely detached at the same time, do not assume something is wrong. You may be standing between identities. One is dissolving, one is emerging, and though the process may feel unstable, it carries a hidden intelligence. The soul is not destroying your life. It is removing what cannot enter the next one. Eventually, the awakening process may reach an even deeper emptiness. You no longer want to become anyone. You do not feel driven to improve yourself. You do not feel excited by ambition. You do not even feel the old desire to have a grand identity, a shining title, a dramatic dream, or a life that impresses others. You may think, I don't want to be anything, and that thought can frighten you, because the modern world is built on becoming. Become successful, become admired, become wealthy, become attractive, become productive, become extraordinary. From childhood, many people are taught to build a self like a machine designed for approval. We learn to wear masks. The good person, the strong person, the talented person, the dependable person, the one who never disappoints, the one who always keeps going. But at a certain stage of awakening, those masks become too heavy. The soul no longer wants to perform identity. It wants to return to essence. And before essence becomes clear, there is often a blank space. This blank space can feel like a loss of purpose, but it may be the most sacred emptiness of all, because for the first time you are not chasing a self created by fear. You are not trying to become someone acceptable. You are not trying to decorate your life with a borrowed dream. You are standing before existence without costume. This is why the feeling of wanting to be nothing may actually be the beginning of truth. Not nothing in a hopeless sense, nothing in the sense of freedom from false identities, nothing in the sense of no longer needing to become a character in someone else's story, nothing in the sense of returning to the raw, quiet, original self beneath all the noise. It is a powerful threshold, and like all thresholds, it can feel empty before it feels holy. The old ambitions may no longer move you. The old goals may seem hollow. The future may not yet have a shape. You may not know what you want, where you are going, or what you are meant to do. But this does not mean your life has ended. It means the false direction has ended. A deeper direction is forming without words. During this time, you may begin to desire peace more than recognition, a slower life more than a louder one, real connection more than social performance, inner stability more than external applause. This is not regression, it is refinement. It is the soul returning to its natural axis. And after this blank period, many people discover that new movement begins without force. They do not have to bully themselves into motivation. They do not have to invent purpose from the mind. Instead, something rises naturally, a desire to create, a desire to serve, a desire to study, a desire to heal, a desire to live differently, a desire to build something that feels true. This new movement is unlike the old ambition. It is not frantic. It is not based on comparison. It does not scream, look at me. It says quietly, this is the way, and because it comes from within, it carries a different power. It is cleaner, it is steadier, it is more alive. So if you feel that you do not want to become anyone, do not fear the emptiness too quickly. You may be releasing the need to become a false self so that your real self can finally appear. The soul does not always awaken by adding more. Sometimes it awakens by removing everything that was never truly yours. Now, If you have listened this far, perhaps a part of you recognizes the pattern, the lack of motivation, the need for solitude, the fading of old interests, the resistance to work, the collapse of routine, the strange mixture of anxiety and surrender, the disappearance of the desire to become anyone at all. Seen separately, these experiences may look like failure, but seen together they may form a map, a mysterious sequence of inner transformation, a soul entering stillness, a field clearing itself of noise, a frequency shifting, a life preparing for a new alignment. Again, this is not something we can reduce to a simple formula or prove like a mechanical law. Human beings are complex. Emotional exhaustion, stress, grief, burnout, depression, and health issues are real and deserve care. But there is also a deeper dimension many people sense intuitively. Sometimes what looks like collapse is also initiation. Sometimes the old life must lose its charge before the new one can appear. Sometimes the body refuses to move because the soul refuses to continue in the wrong direction. Sometimes silence is not emptiness. It is a laboratory, a chamber of invisible work, a place where the hidden electricity of the self is being rewired. And perhaps this is why the process feels so lonely. From the outside, no one can see it. They may only see you resting, withdrawing, slowing down, changing. They may not understand that inside, entire structures are being dismantled. The old beliefs are being questioned. The old fears are being released. The old identities are losing power. The soul is asking, what remains when everything false becomes too heavy to carry? That question is not small. It is the beginning of awakening, because beneath all the pressure to perform, there is a quieter truth. You are not here only to function. You are not here only to produce. You are not here only to meet expectations, answer messages, complete tasks, maintain appearances, and keep proving that you deserve to exist. You are here to become aligned with the life that is truly yours, and alignment often begins with disruption. The compass needle trembles before it finds north. The instrument must be tuned before it plays clearly. The storm must pass before the sky reveals its stars. So if you are in a season where everything feels paused, understand this. A pause can be sacred. A pause can be intelligent. A pause can be the moment before the current returns with greater precision. You may not be lost. You may be between frequencies. You may not be broken. You may be shedding an old form. You may not be lazy. You may be exhausted from carrying a life that no longer matches your soul. And if that is true, then the stillness is not your enemy. It is the doorway. So what should you do when you are in this state? The answer may be simpler than the mind wants it to be. Do not force the old current. Do not attack yourself for needing rest. Do not demand immediate clarity from a process that is still unfolding. Begin with observation. Observe your energy without judgment. Notice what drains you. Notice what softens you. Notice where your body contracts and where it breathes. Notice which relationships feel like noise and which feel like peace. Notice which tasks feel like death and which small actions carry a spark of life. This kind of observation is not passive. It is scientific in the deepest sense. It is the careful study of your own invisible field. Tesla did not worship what was obvious. He followed the hidden current. He studied what others could not see. In your own life, you may need to do the same. Study the invisible. Study the emotion beneath the habit. Study the resistance beneath the schedule. Study the silence beneath the exhaustion. Study the small signal beneath the static. Because your soul may not speak in loud instructions. It may speak through subtle attraction, quiet relief, bodily resistance, sudden clarity, or the strange peace you feel when you stop forcing what is no longer yours. Let rest become part of the process. Let solitude become medicine. Let emptiness become space. Let the old interests fall away without immediately replacing them. Let your life become quiet enough for the next signal to arrive. And when it does arrive, it may not come as a lightning bolt. It may come as a small curiosity, a sentence in a book, a walk that clears your mind, a person who feels aligned, a subject that keeps appearing, a dream you cannot forget, a feeling that says, go this way. Follow it gently. No violence. No panics. No need to turn the first spark into a complete life plan. The new self is not built through force. It is grown through resonance. One honest choice at a time. One quiet yes. One courageous no. One act of care. One release of what no longer belongs. This is how the field changes. This is how the soul moves. This is how a life that once felt frozen begins to flow again. If you are currently in the place where you do not want to do anything, please hear this clearly. You are not automatically failing. You are not automatically behind. You are not automatically weak. You may be tired because you have carried too much for too long. You may be quiet because your inner world is trying to speak. You may be empty because the old desires are leaving. You may be uncertain because the new path has not yet fully revealed itself. And still, something in you is alive. Something in you is listening. Something in you has brought you to this moment because a deeper intelligence knows that you are ready to stop living only from pressure. You have been through more than people know. The silent worries, the nights you held back tears, the kindness no one noticed, the strength you gave when you had almost nothing left, the dreams you buried because survival seemed more urgent, the parts of yourself you abandoned just to be accepted, approved of, or safe. None of it was meaningless. All of it has shaped the depth of who you are. And now perhaps the soul is saying, enough. Not enough as in defeat, enough as in completion, enough carrying the old weight, enough forcing the wrong rhythm, enough betraying the inner voice, enough living as a machine when you were born with a soul. The next stage of your life does not need to be rushed. You do not have to understand everything tonight. You do not have to become productive by tomorrow morning. You do not have to explain your transformation to people who only believe in visible progress. Let the invisible work continue. Let the current return naturally. Let the new frequency stabilize. And when the time comes, you will move. Not because fear pushes you, not because shame commands you, but because life itself begins to rise from within. That movement will feel different. It will be calmer, truer, cleaner, more powerful, like a hidden generator coming back online after a long night of repair. So tonight, if all you can do is breathe, then breathe. If all you can do is rest, then rest. If all you can do is exist quietly, then let that be enough. There is a sacred intelligence in stillness. There is a hidden order inside the pause. There is a future version of you already forming beneath the silence. And one day, when you look back on this strange season, you may realize that you were never truly stuck. You were being recalibrated. You were being protected. You were being guided away from a life that no longer carried your frequency. You were not falling apart. You were becoming impossible to live falsely. And that is not the end of your story. That is where the real one begins.